Hi everyone, welcome to eclipse season. In a normal year, we have 4 eclipses happening in a year, and as I've mentioned before, eclipses in astrology are representative of fated changes. They bring about fated changes in our life, the changes that take many years normally in making. When eclipses happen in that specific area of our life, the changes in that area of our life are accelerated. So, in a normal year, we have 4 eclipses typically. Last year, which was an intense year, 2019, we had 5 eclipses, which makes for big and huge amount of changes, and we experienced that in 2019. So that was an intense year. Now 2020, I'm not going to give it any labels or adjectives because there is a label or adjective that does not exist for this year. So we'll just call, in a year like 2020, we have 6 eclipses, and these are eclipses which are coming with lunar eclipses. 4 lunar eclipses this year. When we have lunar eclipses, they bring about completions, they bring about an old phase of our life to closure so a new one can begin. One of those lunar eclipses are happening on 5th of June 2020 at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. This is an eclipse which is happening at 15 degree Sagittarius. Sagittarius eclipses usually bring a wave of motivation and optimism with them. This is happening at the degree of son of Noam Chomsky. I don't know if many of you are aware of him. He's a well-renowned philosopher, one of the most brilliant minds which are alive, and he's a controversial one. Many people do not believe in his philosophy. Many people don't like his viewpoints, but he's not afraid of voicing his perspective. He has he had made a quote which came to my mind and which came to my consciousness when I was preparing for this eclipse video. He said optimism is a strategy. He said optimism is a strategy for making a better future, because unless you believe that future can be better, it's unlikely that you will step up and take responsibility for making it so. I mentioned that in the Gemini video as well, in the Gemini season video as well. Hope is like a strategy right now. Optimism is a strategy and if you assume that there is no hope, you guarantee that there will be no hope. If you assume that there is an instinct for freedom, there are opportunities to change things, there's a chance that you may contribute to making a better world. He puts optimism as a choice. And this eclipse is bringing that hope, that optimism in a very vivid way to us. This is the time when you might see that despite the odds, we are taking the road of optimism and faith. There's a deliberation in being optimistic about future because that's the only thing that can bring us to the other side. And he had his controversial sides. Noam Chomsky has his controversial side, as does this eclipse. And he mentions this very sentiment in the same quote that he made. He says that the smart way to keep people passive and obedient is to restrict and limit the spectrum of acceptable opinion. Allow very lively debate within that spectrum, even encourage the more critical and dissenting views. That gives people the sense that there is free thinking going on, while at the same time, the presuppositions of the system are being reinforced by the limits put on the range of the debate. He talks about the forced limitations that are being put in front of us to make us passive and obedient. Now, I don't agree or disagree with it, and I've decided to not agree or disagree with philosophies because I think we have to stay neutral in these times. But this eclipse is coming with this very sentiment that he gave. There will be a rush of people wanting to get on with the adventure, get on with a new purpose in life, get on and be optimistic deliberately, motivated deliberately, so they can get out of the old phase and move to the new one. And during spring season, during Gemini season, which is a season of change and shifts, we will take steps to shift our reality. But this is going to be a very intense season. I spoke about it in detail in my note on eclipses, which I put in the last video as well. If you've not looked at it, look at it. I'm going to speak about it to some extent in this video. We are going down the path of a little bit of intense couple of months ahead of ourselves, and I'm not speaking of that lightly. It is we're going to have an eclipse on 5th of June, which will have an impact on us for the course of next 3 months at the very least. In fact, this eclipse is just the first of the series of eclipses that are going to happen in Sagittarius and Gemini, because now nodes, north node or the fated points, they have shifted now zodiac sign, and they are in Gemini and Sagittarius now. So over the course of next 18 months, we'll have eclipses in Gemini and Sagittarius for the next 18 months. We've been having them in Capricorn and Cancer for the last 18 months. We are sort of transitioning the road to success. So this eclipse will just give us a taster of what's about to come, what kind of changes are about to come. It will feel very new, because we have not had these eclipses in the past 19 years. So this is the eclipses which happened in 2001 with South Node in Sagittarius and North Node in Gemini. So we have not experienced these eclipses since 2001. We have not seen those shifts, those kind of shifts since then. So it will feel very dramatic in how it pans out. And eclipses usually bring about quick changes, fated changes. They bring about sudden changes essentially. So we have not experienced this. It will come with a little bit of element of surprise, even to some extent. But what's happening is, right after this 5th of June eclipse, which is coming with Mars, so it's an intense eclipse, we have the eclipse happening right on summer solstice on 21st of June, and that is happening at 0 degree Cancer. This is the series of eclipses which happened right before 9/11. Right before 9/11. So June, July of 2001 is when this eclipse last happened, and we have another eclipse on 5th of July, which is happening at 13 or 14 degree of Capricorn, which also happened in 2001. These two eclipses, they are very, very intense, and the Sagittarius eclipse, which is happening on 5th of June, is going to create the atmosphere of intensity and to some extent over optimism or motivation or over the board fire energy to get us over there. There will be two ways to play this out. Like everything has two ways. When we are in a dual season like we are in right now, we have pathways, we have choices that we can make, and this eclipse of 5th of June will present that choice, and depending on how we make that choice, it can go either ways. This is an eclipse which is coming with a T-square. T-square is when two planets are in opposition with each other, which Sun and Moon are during a lunar eclipse or a full moon. Sun is opposite to the Moon, and then Mars stands at 90 degree with both Sun and Moon, and it creates a crossroad. It creates a crossroad of choices. In a mutable T-square, we are presented with a choice where we can see both sides of what can happen, and we are required to make a choice. And the eclipses that are coming ahead of ourselves on 21st of June and 5th of July are in cardinal sign, which means that we will first make certain choices, certain life choices we will make, like what is the purpose of my life. So certain high level choices which will be made with the eclipse that is coming up, and that will bring about a new start, a new beginning, where we'll take cardinal steps, initiative at our end to begin something with full force. 21st of June on summer solstice, we have a new moon solar eclipse, and that comes right after that, on 27th of June, we have Mars entering Aries. Mars is the zodiac sign that rules courage, that rules our ability to get what we love. It is our ability to attain things in life. It is our courage, it is our initiative, it is the planet of war. Mars is in its own sign in Aries, very, very strong, and it will stay there for the next 6 months. This is intense. This has not happened since the World War II. We had last time Mars in Aries very, very briefly for 6 months in 1988, but it was only in the first 4 degree of Aries. This is going to be Mars in Aries for the full duration, right in the heart of Aries, at very, very critical degrees, which will activate the degrees of largest of the nations, the top 10 nations in the world. They will activate certain critical points or in the birth chart of those countries. So this will be of huge, huge impact on our world. And we'll experience that right after the eclipse of 21st of June at 0 degree Cancer, when cardinal steps are taken with the intent of Cancer, with the intent for our well-being, with the intent of protection, with the intent of Cancer is a sign of family, putting our hands around our own family, our own country, and saying, I'll do everything to protect these people. So I am sorry to be the person to do this, but looking at it, I am not able to, at this stage, not able to infer something different from this. I hope that choices are made in a different fashion in the coming weeks, but the way it looks, even in our personal choices, this is the month when we are going to be changing our mind about our purpose in life, because we are undergoing 6 retrogrades in the month of June. We will have 6 planets retrograde in the month of June. When planets are retrograde, we are shown another side of the situation, another part of the situation. We are made to make choices on the basis of how we feel and not how it looks to the external world, because retrogrades are introspective. They are about making choices without social influences. So you will have this opportunity to shift the very direction of your life during this month using the impetus that this eclipse is giving you. The eclipse in the zodiac sign of Sagittarius is about wanting to experience something that we have not experienced before. We want to move ourselves beyond mundane, beyond what we have done before. This is a zodiac sign that represents travel, education, publication, adventure, sports, physical activity. It represents purpose in life, seeking our own personal truth. So people will be driven to go in that direction, but you have to be mindful that now South Node or Ketu is now in Sagittarius. South Node, wherever it is, and South Node will be in Sagittarius for the next 18 months, wherever South Node is, we are required to release something. We are required to give up something. We are required to detach ourselves from an old model of existence in that part of our life. Because of that, travel, education, publication, adventure, sports, physical activity, purpose in life, faith, religious groups, that will undergo shift. Release of the old and the advent of the new. Release of the old way of thinking and advent of the new. But in the process of that, we will feel that some people will be losing the faith as well. There's loss of faith and truth sometimes that happens with South Node in Sagittarius. We experience that post 9/11 as well, because sometimes the whole of the old belief system needs to be erased for the new one to come. So we in that space of not knowing the future, if we are trying to look 10 years ahead, we cannot see at that time. We cannot see because we don't know what's going to happen next day. So when you don't know what's going to happen next day, there is a feeling of loss of faith and loss of truth. But North Node in Gemini asks us to stay in the present moment, stay with the present moment, stay with what you have right now and work with that, and use this full moon to restructure and reconnect with yourself to see what has outlived its purpose in your life and what drives you now. The person that you have become, the new person that you have become, what is it ready for? What is your truth? What is the adventure that you seek within? And how do you want to go about it? It will stimulate a very different part of your brain. Sagittarius is all about right brain. It's about the right thinking. It's about lateral thinking. It's about thinking beyond mundane, thinking beyond day to day, thinking more on a spiritual basis, on a basis of what appeals to your soul. It's about what's your personal truth and voicing that personal truth. And this is coming with Mars squaring both Sun and Moon. When Mars is there, we are activated in that direction. We are forced to sometimes face certain truths that we would normally not do so. It's forming a mutable T square. When mutable T square forms, we are sort of in some ways we find ourselves in a mental or even a verbal conflict. So you would see at the early part of June, especially around 5th or 6th of June, you will find that conflict reach its peak to some extent. I spoke about this in Venus retrograde as well, because Venus is going to square Mars on 2nd of June itself. We will have some amount of realization that maybe what we are creating is not what we truly love. And on 3rd of June, when Sun meets Venus, that can be a very, very good time for us to start sowing the seeds of what we truly love and moving forward from there. Moving forward from there, it's like a war against the old. The war against the old belief system, old way of thinking, not accepting the old models of existence anymore. You will be motivated to take action. It will be very tough to stay with the old, and it's sort of there's a courage within you which will come out, and it can come out in form of losing temper to some extent. You will not be able to stay neutral in that situation when this happens, because simmering anger would come to surface, the things that we were avoiding earlier, even the kind of conflicts. Sometimes we don't want to get into those conflicts. Wherever these mutable signs are, if a conflict happens, we tend to avoid that confrontation sometimes. And those embedded confrontations, both in your personal and professional life, in some ways they will come out, and we are seeing some of that already in the global events. I spoke about this in the Venus retrograde videos as well. We will see the first 10 days of June to be very, very volatile from diplomatic relationships perspective, because the things that are not normally said openly, they would be said. And some of it will be based on personal beliefs. Sagittarius is what we believe. It doesn't have to be universal truth. It is our truth which is spoken. And it will come with a little bit of frustration. You will find yourself as well in presence of other people wanting to air their frustration as well. And it's the time to not dismiss it. It's the time when deepest pain will be coming to surface, and there is a need to release it. There is a need to acknowledge it. And the good part of mutable T square, mutable signs, is that it helps you see both sides of the equation. So you will see that choice clearly in front of you. What needs to be released, and what is your future, what you should be working on next 18 months, and what has already somehow left your life, because lunar eclipse comes with closures, especially the lunar eclipse that comes with South Node. It comes with closure, but June is a month of retrogrades. When planets are retrograde, the release takes time. The ending takes time. The ending is not instant. So it might still linger on, but the mental recognition will be, in my view, very quick. The knowing of what needs to be left behind, what is the past emotional pattern to some extent, what has been comfortable in the past but it is not comfortable anymore, that will become very, very open and clear to you. And it could come through verbal conflict even at that time. Another thing that we should be aware of at the time is that Mercury will be retrograde, or the 6 planets that are retrograde in the month of June. One of them is Mercury. As I've spoken about Mercury retrograde at length in the past, most of you would be aware when Mercury is retrograde, the information that we did not see before, that comes to surface. So when Mercury is retrograde, the suggestion is not to take dramatic actions because the information is still coming to surface. So June is mutable season. It's a season of change. It's not a season of taking cardinal action. Cardinal action comes in Cancer season, in the next season, after 21st, after the summer solstice. You'll start making shifts, but Mercury is retrograde till about 12th of July. So in my view, during these eclipses of June and July, information will be coming to open, but the actions on them might happen after mid of July, after Mercury goes direct. Mercury rules our business communication. It rules the very documentation and the formal communication and the verbal communication. So when Mercury is retrograde, and it's going retrograde from 18th of June to 12th of July. So from 18th of June to 12th of July, you'll find that business communication is held up in some ways. You'll find that the things that you thought they were supposed to come through, they are held back in some ways. Because we are supposed to take a step back to see whether this is what we truly want to sign off on or not. And Mercury will be going retrograde in Cancer, so our emotional impulses when it comes to business will get tested at that time. And that's happening during a very volatile eclipse season. So during why I'm talking about Mercury retrograde right now is that Mercury is walking the degrees right now from 2nd of June to 18th of June, which it will walk back from 18th of June to 12th of June, which means that the things that will be said, the documents that will get signed, the business work that will get done between 2nd of June to 18th of June will undergo revision. And you will see that in the global events as well, that the things that are being said, and many of them you'll find will be said in the heat of the moment, because Mercury will be in Cancer. When Mercury is in Cancer, a lot of voicing of business interests and business talks happen from a place of emotions, come from a place of passion. It is a water sign. Water sign feels things and then says them. So there'll be undercurrent in discussions which will be happening. So during this part of the month from 2nd of June to 18th of June, keep an eye out on what are you committing to. What are the business communication? What kind of things are you saying yes to? And are they coming from a place of it being right for you or it being comfortable for you? So be on lookout for that. With the Sagittarius full moon, which is happening on 5th of June, we are starting a process of wildfire. Sagittarius is a sign of wildfire. So mass, people just getting excited out of them wanting to express their own truth. There'll be heightened emotions with that, especially with Mars squaring it. We all want to discover something new for ourselves. Exploration will be on steroids. This is an eclipse that is attached with space exploration, discovery, new fuels, new energy sources. It is also attached with firearms, with explosives. So we have to be careful if we have any of those in the house during that time, especially during the eclipse. We want to be careful when it comes to international travel. Eclipse of this nature, which comes with South Node, it normally comes with travel incidents. I'm sorry to say that, but I've looked through the series of eclipses that this eclipse sits in, and every single eclipse in the past attached with the series has come with a transportation incident. It has come with a transit incident, and it doesn't have to be planes, it can be trains. So we have to be a little bit careful at that time in terms of driving, in terms of uh, road rage. To some extent, people will be a little bit overexcited at that time. So on that day, especially 5th of June, a day or before and after, you want to be especially careful. In fact, in the first 10 days of June, you want to be really careful in terms of people acting out to some extent, especially related to travel. Mass immigration is linked to this. Immigration goes through changes. The process of immigration goes through big amount of changes in this time. Sagittarius rules education as well, higher education which requires you to go to college, for example, not the junior education, the senior education. So there might be some big shifts when it comes to senior education as well, or the certifications that we go for. We'll find some amount of changes and shifts in that. It's possible that you might have tried for some certification and you get that and you achieve that. It's a time of closure, completion. It's like a graduation season. We are graduating out to a new phase in life. It can be a time when we can see some publications of great impact which move people, which impact people in a big way. It rules a belief system. So it will bring out the belief system. People will want to voice their belief system. They will bring out the difference in belief system as well. If there was a belief system, people were not speaking up about what they truly feel about something, they will start speaking up more. It rules masses being moved by an ideology together, whether it is through religion or it's through a cult or it's through a culture. Essentially, we'll find people forming sects. There'll be groups that get formed with this, and you want to be a little bit away from people getting together, possibly for revolts, etc. This can get a little bit out of hand during this time. And Mercury will revisit all of this. So this is not going to be the first time we'll be discussing all of this. This will go on to the period of 9 weeks approximately, because Mercury will stay in Cancer for 9 weeks this year. So there'll be a lot of back and forth on these changes. Education system changes, transportation and travel changes, trade changes, international relationship changes, immigration changes, cultural changes, influences change. Some of us might decide that somebody who used to teach us is not a teacher we want anymore. We might be releasing certain influences. Sagittarius is a sign that rules guru, influencers. Some of the influencers, they might be completing their period of influence on us. They could be people who we might be releasing at the time. So the eclipses come with a little bit of precaution. I'm just giving you what are the normal eclipse precautions. It doesn't mean all of that will happen, but we got to be careful on these. So driving and travel, especially if you're doing long distance travel, I like you to be careful about it. If you're using your vehicle, just be careful about it. There'll be restless, excitable people on the road. If you have firearms in the house or you stay in a place where firearms are allowed to be there, just be careful of loose firearms during this time. Sagittarius rules firearms as well. If you have any important project or publication that you're working on, I would request you to back up the data. Avoid crowded areas between from 2nd to, I would say, 7th or 8th of June if you can at the time. I know a lot of places are opening and we would want to be out. It doesn't mean that we should not be out, but if there's a crowded area with hysteria or revolts, for example, going on, you want to be a little bit away from it because it can go a little bit extreme at this time. If you have any animals, take special care of them, because Sagittarius full moon or eclipses, they affect the animals quite a lot. They get agitated a little bit during this time. The other thing, and I know this is an intense video, but I have to tell you what I know. So I'm trying to just convey what's coming out in the aspects. When Jupiter and Pluto are together, which they will be throughout the month of June, they are a theme for this year. Jupiter Pluto conjunction will be exact on 30th of June. This is their second meeting. When these two planets come together in the way they are in June and July, we normally see large and enormous storms, especially when they're coming with a lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. Normally, large and enormous storms, and they come a little bit suddenly to some extent. Their destruction can be a little bit higher than normal. Tornadoes, wildfire, lightning, they are more likely with this eclipse. With the combination of this eclipse and the ruler of this eclipse, which is Jupiter, in conjunction with Pluto throughout the month of June and July. So we'll see a little bit of that happening at this time. The positives, there are a lot of positives of Sagittarius full moon or eclipses are supposed to help us find our path. They're supposed to guide us to our path through a spiritual knowing. We know what works for us, what does not know for us, what does not work for us, and they're supposed to help us find the right path. They help us take a higher road as well. If what you've been walking is not your thing, or the way you're dealing with the other people is not your thing anymore, it helps us take the high road. It gives us enthusiasm for a new quest in our life. It gives us motivation. It gives us motivation to take action. It's a fire sign. It does not let us sit with things anymore. It wants us to take action. This eclipse is visible largely in Asia. It's an Asia-centric eclipse. So politically, we will see a lot of events happening in Asia. Sagittarius eclipse usually comes with disclosures about religious leaders as well. Sometimes the religious leaders, they fall from their throne on this one. The last time this eclipse happened, the priests were it was revealed what the priests were doing in terms of abuse. So we can expect some of the disclosure when it comes to certain religious leaders of influence to some extent. The visibility of this eclipse will be happening in Asia, Europe, Australia, Africa. So Southern Hemisphere will be able to see that. This is not an eclipse of North America. It's not directly affecting North America, but astrologically it will. North America, United States of America is a Sagittarius ascendant. So this is an important eclipse for its relationships and its status in relationships to other people. The balance between what's in good interest of US and what is in good interest for its partners will come into focus. Diplomacy, trade, international relationships will be in big focus right now, which I spoke about in the Venus retrograde video as well. 6 months usually it takes for things to come to closure. This is an eclipse at that time. As I said, it might take a little bit longer for you to close on things which are coming to an end here, because the south node will visit this point only in March of 2020. So it's possible that you have to complete something. It could be like a publication, you have to get something out. It could be a written work that you need to get out. It could be a graduation that you need to get to. It could be something you need to release, which is this is a typical eclipse of reskilling, where you have to empty one type of mind and you have to refuel another type of mind. It's like, we have to sometimes release the old knowledge to move to the new ones. That reskilling could take some time, all the way till March of 2021. You can look at 2002. I know it's 2012. This eclipse is a little bit special eclipse. It did not exactly repeat in 2001. The eclipses which are happening on 21st of June and 4th or 5th of July did repeat in 2001. This eclipse exactly got activated in 2012, May or June of 2012. So if you're old enough, looking back to what happened in May, June, July of 2012, it can give you a little bit of hint, but nothing is exactly the same, but it can give you a hint of what needs to be possibly released, what needs to be put to end. What happened in 2001 could repeat as well right now exactly as is to some extent, because a lot of aspects of 2001 are exactly same as right now, and the two eclipses that are happening in June and July, they are going to be exactly same as 2001. So 2001 is definitely a time period for you to look to if you're old enough. But if you are a younger audience, I would suggest maybe look at May or June of 2012, when Venus was also retrograde where it is right now. So you might have made some choice at that time. A similar choice could present itself to you for you to decide something at this time. This is happening at 15 degree 34 minutes of Sagittarius. As I said, the star that it is activating is a star called Algete. It is Algete is a star which represents all giants kneel. Everybody has to submit themselves to something larger than yourself on this degree. It gives you a sense of purpose, but through honoring larger powers to some extent. So, what I'm trying to say is that maybe there is a little bit of release that is required, a bit of control release is required for us to be molded to the new destiny, for us to go towards brighter things, maybe a little bit of believing, having the faith. As I said, deliberate optimism is possibly required, and the star has this power to get the biggest, the Hercules, the kings, and the royalty to kneel to some extent. So we'll find that the leaders of the world have to some extent, kneel to certain powers bigger than themselves. And I want that in the note I posted about the aspects that are happening today as well, because today Mercury is in conjunction with North Node or Rahu. So what happens is that sometimes we say things which are boastful to some extent, and this eclipse will have the power to some extent to tamper down the boast that has happened before. So you'll find that the head of kneeling Hercules that this star represents, the respect for nature, caring about the planet, a desire to have all things in right place, and people kneeling for that, people agreeing to some extent to honor something larger than yourselves. You'll find that in some ways coming through, and it may not come in the best of the ways because the star is attached with nature, making it known to man to some extent to honor nature. So a storm or an earthquake is normally attached with it in order for mankind to believe sometimes in ways which are bigger than us. And again, I said that in the note as well, which I wrote about these eclipses in April. It's intense eclipse season. I cannot underestimate the power of the things that are about to come. They are intense in nature. We have to be prepared for them, and prepared with deliberate optimism to change this, to take this change in stride and make something better out of that. And the eclipses are one thing. We also have Antares, the star Antares and Aldebaran also getting involved in this eclipse. Antares and Aldebaran are two royal Persian stars. They are opposite to each other, and they are getting activated by both the Venus retrograde and the other end of the spectrum, which is Sagittarius. Venus is in Gemini, which is the opposite sign of Sagittarius. Venus retrograde is activating Aldebaran, and this lunar eclipse is activating Antares. Why I'm talking about it is that in some astrological belief systems, this is noted as starting date of war. This is not the official announced date of war, but this is the time when a war begins without people clearly knowing it, or in some ways, this is like during 1941 when we had the Pearl Harbor at the time, and Mars was retrograde in Aries at the time as well. United States did not officially join the war till Mars went direct. They were saying during this time when Mars was in Aries between September of 1941, around that time, yeah. So they were still on the fence. They were supporting the European partners. We had that shoot on site order on 11th of September, and Mars had just gone retrograde at the time. So the official acceptance of involvement in a war might come later, but the official start date of the war sometimes is considered when these two, this axis of Aldebaran and Anthras, the royal stars, is activated, and it will be activated around 4th or 5th of June. And we would see that Mars in Aries, in my view, will build this up. On a personal basis, it will give us courage to move forward, you know. So these two stars, they're royal stars, they help us get a little bit ruthless with things. They don't want myths anymore. They are known as myth busters to some extent. It's the brightest star in Scorpio constellation. So from a sidereal perspective, this is the constellation of Scorpio, the constellation of truth. So in an obstinate way, we can go after, and we'll not accept false or fake in our life anymore. And you'll find yourself to some extent starting a war against something that does not serve you anymore. And that intense intent is supported by Jupiter and Pluto together. Jupiter and Pluto together, they come because they want to burst a bubble. I've spoken about it an enormous number of times before this video. They come together because they want you to have more autonomy, more power when it comes to your material reality. And for that, certain myths need to go. On a medical basis, because every eclipse that comes with, especially lunar eclipse, it comes with a little bit of force. So the Sagittarius eclipse, on a medical basis, certain precautions should be taken if you have any of these things. Sagittarius eclipse usually puts pressure on the nerves. So if you have sciatic nerve issue or any other inflammation of nerves issue in your legs, in your arms, in your hands, in your shoulder, hips, or muscles, arteries, or nerves, you got to be a little bit careful. Like restless leg syndrome can get a little bit accentuated during this time, especially during the period of the eclipse. You want to be careful. I usually, if I have any of the nerves issue, usually because of magnesium deficiency, it's there. So if you have that, I normally personally take magnesium, but it depends on you. It basically stimulates hyperactivity. It's a fire sign. It is wildfire. So it will amp us up collectively. So if you have any of the nerves, inflammation of the nerves issue, you want to be a little bit careful. It stimulates hyperactivity both in animals as well as in us to some extent. So if you have hyperthyroid, for example, you want to be a little bit careful. Sagittarius rules thighs and buttocks. So eclipses, during eclipse time, usually even doctors don't do procedures unless they are urgent or something. But if you are getting any elective done or any operation done which involves thighs and buttocks, I would be a little bit careful during that time. If you have BP, again, as I said, nerves will be high. You want to be a little bit careful when you have blood pressure at that time. Stay away stay off coffee, stay off a little bit of driving and drinking and driving, especially at this time. It sort of is a restless leg syndrome kind of eclipse to some extent. So that's what I have. We have another eclipse coming up on 21st of June, which is happening on summer solstice. It will help us begin something new after we have made a choice during this time. One thing I want you to be careful about is that this, as I said, don't take a cardinal step at this time, because what's happening is we have Neptune is standing still in the month of June. Neptune is the planet of cloud deception. It also shows us brighter things. It sort of is the higher octave of Venus. Venus is beauty. Neptune is dream. It is fog. So it is required for us to dream something bigger than the current existence. But Neptune does not let you see things clearly. There's a lack of clarity and lack of taking responsibility to some extent. So during this time especially, you'll find that even though you're open to change and choices are being shown, I would not suggest you to make a deliberate choice at this stage. Let things completely reveal themselves to you. And in the month of June, things will be up in the air. There will be, as I said, people will be talking about their personal truths. It does not mean that that's your truth. So on 11th of June, we have Sun making a square with Neptune. Somebody might tell you something which is not really real at the time, and you physically can feel not so motivated at this time. Mars is also in Pisces at this time till 27th of June. So in the month of June, things will not be clear. They will not be obvious. There will be a lot of hidden things happening below the surface by people that you would not be aware of. But Mars in Pisces does not take direct action against somebody. It is normally a deceptive move, essentially. And the period in the middle of this month, around 11th, 12th, 13th of this month, Mars is making a conjunction with Neptune. There will be a lot of people who will be doing things which are not really kosher to some extent. These will be deceptive actions which will be happening, misled even actions to some extent. And you'll find yourself wanting to use this energy in a different way, because Mars and Pisces can be used for the good of all. You can do certain things which are charity oriented, which are spiritually oriented, which are creatively oriented, which are oriented to help the larger set of people. But yeah, you would want to be careful on that day to not make a choice. And in general, at this time, as I said, during mutable sign, we change our mind. It's not the time to make up the mind, it's the time to change our mind and get the impetus to make that change to some extent. So good luck for what's about to come. We'll speak in the next video about the solar eclipse that's coming on 21st of June. Thank you.